Diego Gutiérrez Zaldívar. Give a big hand for Dieguito. Hey.
Thank you, man.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Today I'm not talking specifically about RSK, which is the company I'm CEO. I want to share with you more of a concept, a vision about what Bitcoin started and where we are heading. How many of you own crypto? Okay. So it's a Bitcoiner conference. So I like that, or crypto conference. So, maybe 25 years ago, a revolution started with the birth of the web. And that revolution changed many aspects of our society. It changed how the music industry works. It changed how we access knowledge. It changed many aspects of our lives, that the ones that are old enough remember how the world used to be. The world used to be a world that was unconnected, where you had to pay a lot of money to actually get connections or communications across continents. Now you can communicate freely with anybody in the world from the palm of your hand. Now you can access all the knowledge in the world from the palm of your hand. Now complete industries have changed. The entertainment industry has changed in the way they create value for society. And that was built, or that was possible because of the Internet of Information. That Internet of Information is an Internet of abundance. But there's one thing that Internet couldn't change. That thing was what the Internet of Information couldn't make free was money, was value. Because until today, in most cases, I would say 99% of the population, here we have crypto aficionados, so it's different for us, but 99% of the population doesn't own their money, doesn't own their value. Even when they think they are transferring money through the internet, what they are doing is relying on third parties to transfer that value. They are using the private networks of transfer value of the banks, the credit cards, the payment processors. And that, of course, has a lot of consequence, but that is not a new thing. The truth is that this system with intermediaries has been going on and on for many, many years. I would say a few hundred. And that's how we used to give our gold to Marco Polo in Venice, and he gave us a little piece of paper with his seal, and we could redeem the same amount of gold, more or less the commission of Marco Polo, in Peking. So, but commissions are kind of okay. I mean, if you provide a service, it's okay. As long as you are an intermediary providing value, I can accept that. But the problem is those transfer of value networks, those private networks, don't talk well to each other. They are walled gardens, so they don't talk to each other. So those incompatibilities turn into cost. And that's why half of the population in our world has no access to the very basic financial services. That's half of the productive population of the world. And of course, older families as well. And as we all know, and I think for many of us, that's the reason why we got into the crypto space. We got into the Bitcoin space many years ago. Power tends to corrupt people, and people who we delegate power in many times start serving their own purposes instead of serving the purposes of the people who delegated power in them. Because when we talk about transfer of value, it's not only transfer of money. When we delegate in a representative our political power, that's transfer of value as well. We are transferring for maybe 4 years our political power into that representative to make decisions for us. So the question is, why this Internet of abundance, this Internet of information, couldn't change the society we live in and couldn't change something that is at the core of our society? that is the transfer of value. And the reason is very simple. Information can be replicated almost instantly and without cost. And in the case of the transfer of value, we want the opposite. What we want is information to be scarce. We want unique representations, unique digital representations of value. And that, of course, is a key problem, because how do you know that I'm not going to create a representation of the local currency or a house or a car, and I'm not going to sell the same thing to multiple people across the globe? In a world that is fully connected, that was impossible to do. So if you asked me 10 years ago, I would say, that's okay, that's how the world works. We have to cope with it. We have to accept that we will always have intermediaries that time to time will betray us, or that will exclude half of the population in the world. But as all you know, or most of you know, in 2008 something incredible happened. Somebody or a group of somebodies had an amazing idea and shared it with the world freely. And that idea is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not only a currency, because maybe many of you are currency holders, but Bitcoin is a revolution because it's the first network for the transfer of value without intermediaries. It's the first network that enables scarcity in the digital world. And that's a key element of Bitcoin. And of course, the first application is Bitcoin as a currency. But my idea is to share with you a vision of what's coming next, what we are building on top of this idea, on top of this technology. So, as we know, currency is the first use case of Bitcoin. I would say, we usually try to connect things with what we know. So at the beginning, we thought that PCs were powerful typewriters. Now we know they are a little bit more than that. And with Bitcoin, we did the same. We say, okay, first thing we can do is create a currency, a unit of account. It was needed to create the incentive model between the parties. But there's much more, and we know now that computers can provide much more. And it's okay that we don't see the full potential at the beginning. Indeed, very smart people like this economist, Paul Krugman, were unable to see the potential of the internet in the 90s. He said that the internet was going to have the same impact as the fax machine. He missed it a little bit, I think. So even if you are very smart, sometimes you don't see the new phenomenons coming. You don't see the tidal wave coming in your way. So, and of course, all these companies are using Bitcoin as a payment means or another cryptocurrency as a payment means. So it's definitely what we created with cryptocurrencies is definitely the best remittance network in the world. Because even with the high cost of Bitcoin at times, we have cheaper transaction costs in other cryptocurrencies, but even with the highest fees in Bitcoin, still it was the best remittance network. If you use SWIFT, you need to wait for a week, maybe, depending on where you are transferring the money, between 2 days, 3 days to a week, and you pay $25, $40. If you use crypto, in the worst case, you will pay $1, and you will have to wait 10 minutes. That's a revolution that Bitcoin also made in terms of connecting our world economically. It was easy to make a video conference, a free video conference with, Siberia, but it was impossible to send there $50. So that's part of the revolution, and we shouldn't miss that. And also, Bitcoin proved to be a very good store of wealth over the years. But as I said, I want to go beyond that, because underneath Bitcoin, there are three very powerful technology that most of you know, of course. We have the blockchain. Given that you are all knowledgeable people, I don't bore you. I just did this simple graph to explain what a blockchain is. No, this is a This is a joke. But what is a blockchain? If we take it down to the bone, blockchain is no more, no less than a ledger with traceability of changes. It's not something revolutionary per se. It's like what we did is, it's interesting because now you have this chaining between the pages of that ledger, where if you change anything in the past, it will create a domino effect in all the subsequent pages, so I can know that something changed. But if I only have one blockchain and that's it, I'm creating this chaining, a hacker can get into my computer and they will change any record, and I don't have a way to know what was the original version. So Bitcoin went one step further, created a proof of work, and that proof of work, it's adding an additional element of game theory to the mix, saying, okay, you have to contribute value before you get value in order to secure the network and get profit from it. And if you betray the agreement we have, the social contract we have, you don't get paid. Okay, so basically, the security in Bitcoin goes beyond technology. It's a game theory-based security. So that's why people stay honest in the network, basically because they have more to lose than what they have to earn. And of course, as I said, a single blockchain, it's just a database. A federated blockchain is not so different to what we have been doing in the traditional space, trusting intermediaries, maybe less than one in that case, or more than one in that case. But the true revolution of Bitcoin is also having a decentralized network where you have multiple servers with the data replicated and validating any new data that is arriving. So it's not only, it's not only one computer creating new pages for this ledger, and contributing value before getting the reward that keeps the network safe, but also thousands of servers that every time a new page, new information arrives, are validating that the data complies to the social contract of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency that we are talking about. So these are the three revolutionary technologies that enable something new. Because when you have an open blockchain, and this openness and neutrality are key, protected by a decentralized network, we have something new. We have what I like to call the Internet of Value. A new internet designed for scarcity, designed to share value openly, where you don't have to ask permission to access, to transfer value, or to receive value. And that is very powerful. But as the Internet of Information was built in layers, and we started with the TCP IP, we learned how to connect to computers, then we say, okay, guys, how we emulate the communication models we have in our society. So we replicated the mail, and we had email. And then we say, okay, somebody wanted to share knowledge. Tim Berners-Lee wanted to share knowledge at CERN, and he said, okay, I will create a protocol to share knowledge, and the web was born. And then many, many years later, we started combining those elements in new ways. Emerging patterns were appearing, and we created the social networks and other combinations. But the technology was there. It was the humans that needed to adapt this new technology, because all the technology to create social networks was present in the 90s. I was there, we were talking about communities, but in a different way. And it took us a while until we realized, how to use these networks to our favor, how to use these technologies to our favor. And that's a key element. And I would say, the revolution of the Internet of Value will be faster, but it's not going to be much faster because of us. We are, computers are faster, connectivity is bigger, everything is ready for disruption, but we are still the same slow humans we used to be. So, it's because these revolutions are both technological revolutions and also human revolutions. So we have to keep that in mind when we do things. So in that sense, the Internet of Value, that's my opinion, of course, but the Internet of Value will be also built in layers. So we have the store of value layer, that's what Bitcoin gave us, that was the present Satoshi Nakamoto gave us. But we have other stores of value now. But what is a store of value? Decentralized store of value. What is it to humanity if we have centralized business logic or decision making? So we need to have decentralized logic, decentralized decision making. And in that sense, Ethereum was the first one to bring that concept into life. It did like in a detached network, a completely separate network, and they combined the store of value and the decision making in one layer. And in RSK, what we did is brought decision making, the same concept, to Bitcoin. So that's layer 2. And also you can, given that you have more freedom because Bitcoin preserves security over flexibility, you can also change the consensus protocol or try different consensus protocols. That's what made Ethereum also scale, and RSK is also scaling a little bit further, using different consensus protocols that are more nimble. So we are also experimenting in other consensus protocols that might be less secure, but they are more nimble, they can process more transactions per second, faster validation times. So we are scaling the network as well, giving more flexibility and better scaling. And as we learn in this process, we realize if we want to reach 1 billion users, we need to have layer 3s. We need to have off-chain processing, off-chain services that will enable giving services to 1 billion users. Because the challenges of serving a crypto anarchist are much different than serving my mother at home. So, I mean, if we want to provide services to my mother, we need to simplify processes, even though maybe she will lose some security or she will lose some control. So it's a process where we are building layers on this Internet of Value to enable the regular Joe to get into this technology. And still, I think, even we simplify the process, there's still a huge educational element to this, because every time somebody gets in touch with Bitcoin or with a new technology, they start questioning how society works. They start questioning how money works. So, and hopefully in the future, when the 5th wave of disintermediation, as I like to call it, that is the political disintermediation comes, that will also question how power works. So that's the revolutionary part. And, well, I have to speed up, I think. I'm good? So we are building these decentralized services on top of blockchain services, and that will complete the picture. But what it means to our society, because it's, again, I was talking about technology with purpose, technology, human beings interacting with this technology. On one side, one thing, I think Nick Szabo's vision of smart contracts was simpler, because he was talking about smart contracts that were self-executing and without intervention of the human being. But conceptually, if you think about our society has a programming language, and that programming language is the law. So basically, we have a programming language, we have a computer that runs those languages, that is the legal system, and we have the hackers in our society that are the lawyers. So I know you never thought of your lawyer like that, but lawyers do a lot of that. Like, they tweak the contract in a little way, so they escape the system in a way. So they are kind of hackers of the old society. So basically, what we are doing with smart contracts is replicating this concept of having, a system that will enforce certain rules, a programming language for those rules, and then the programs are the contracts, these smart contracts. And now people is saying, okay, why don't we want to go a step further and we create smart property? So we have property that, directly react to the logic in a smart contract. So I always like to do this little game about like saying, okay, what if all in this room buy a smart car, an autonomous car, I program a wallet, so every time somebody jumps in, a payment channel starts, the passenger goes down, the payment channel closes, this car will go to the gas station, pay for its gas, If it breaks, it will call the mechanic, pay to the mechanic from the wallet, and once a day, once a month, it will distribute the dividends, the earnings to us proportionally to what everybody put into the car. And that autonomous taxi can be built today. All the technology to build that is here today. Of course, we don't have passengers willing to jump on that taxi, but that's okay. Again, human beings being slow, that's a problem. So that is a reality today. That's kind of where we are heading. But there are four, and I think maybe I will spend 1 minute more, but there are four things that I like to share with you in terms of how these impact our society. Do you know what these bills have in common? Somebody knows? Exactly. None of these was created by a state. The oldest one, the one in the middle, is a Chinese note from 900 after Christ. I don't know how to say it. And the other ones are maybe 150 years ago. So what happened? Why suddenly all the money is state money when we used to have all private money? No? So something changed. Until 150 years ago, money was private money. Of course, the problem again, intermediaries. Intermediaries, in a way, betrayed our trust. They were not reliable. They were saying, okay, I have the gold, but they were printing more paper than gold. So that broke the trust, and then the states came to the rescue. And now we know that states coming to the rescue was not so good, because the dollar lost, I don't know, 90% of the purchasing power, if not more, in the last 100 years. So, I mean, there is a value in having stable coins, stable money, because you can predict in the short term, how things will go. So short-term money is good, needs to be stable, but long-term money that preserves value, that doesn't necessarily need to be stable. It needs to be valuable. That's why gold has lasted 5,000 years, because you knew that buying gold, you could preserve value for your grandchildren. You could preserve value for the long-term generation. So that's the difference between long-term money and short-term money. But now that we have crypto, there's two things we can do. We can create completely decentralized P2P monetary systems. We can go back to the gold standard, now that we have smart contracts and Bitcoin. We can go back to the gold standard secured by a smart contract. So instead of using 4 NOCs, we are using a smart contract that will show us at all time the backing between the collateral asset, the backing asset, and the stable coin. So now we have stable coins backed by digital gold. So that's one of the revolutions. And the other side of this revolution is that we can go back to private money. We can go back to create community money, complementary money, that represents the value created in a community, in a network of value. So a lot of things that have failed in the past, now we can be retested in the light of this new technology. The other big element, and I'm very close to the end, is social scaling. As Dunbar studied, primates can, like apes, can relate maybe to 60 guys, 60 friends, and they can create trust networks of maybe 60 individuals. Human beings are awesome. We can do 150 interactions of trust-based relationships. So we have a bigger social connectivity than any other primate. So we are very, very advanced. Still, we had to, create this system of representativeness basically to scale our society, because it was impossible to coordinate millions of human beings when the trust we can build is only 150. So we started having representatives basically to coordinate our society on a greater level. But as we know, those social contracts we have here has been broken. With Bitcoin, we have the first example of a very simple social contract for issuing 21 million units in a certain way that has been running for 9 years without any disruption, without anybody breaking that social contract. So now our challenge is how we use this technology to create more complex social contracts, how we use this technology to scale our society and get rid of some intermediaries on the way, of course. So, and finally, this is the closest to my heart. Reputation-based identities are a very powerful tool, because with this technology, the other thing we can start doing is you can create your identity on the blockchain. Everybody knows you cannot modify that identity. And every time you interact with others, every time you learn something, this agriculture from Nicaragua interacts with somebody, whether he's selling his crops, whether he's learning how to use new tools, whether he's asking for a loan, all his interactions, or whether he's helping his community, all his interactions can be recorded in an immutable ledger for him to prove his conduct. So his conduct becomes who he is. It doesn't matter who a government says you are. Your conduct, your behavior over years is who you are. How you treat others, how you behave when you have agreements, that's more valuable than any number to define you. And now we have the technology to actually create those identities and empower these individuals that are invisible in our society. And of course, we can do that with privacy if we are careful. And that's a key element and the key challenge in this work, in this process. And finally, if we combine this with a phenomenon that is happening in the world, that is half of the population in the world is having access to a smartphone in the next year or the following year, we are in the face of a unique opportunity to include these people, to give them the tools to be empowered, to thrive, to be connected, and create a more egalitarian world, a world of opportunities for everybody. So that's a vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You talk a little bit too long. That means we only have time for one question. But the good news is Diego will talk again tomorrow at the Latin American session. We have a panel. And then you can ask him all kinds of questions, all in the breaks. But one question to Diego, please. You have a mic? Or you want mine? You should have a mic. Any question?
Maybe I can ask a question.
You can ask
ask them.
Ask questions to the audience. Yeah. Good idea.
How many of you are in blockchain for the economic aspects, and how many of you are for the economic aspects? You got into the space for the raise your hands. Okay. How many of you are because of the social aspects of this technology? Okay, so that's very mixed up.
Both ends.
Well, I think that's part of the beauty of what we are doing. This is not a contradiction between, wealth and social transformation. These technologies can enable both, and that's the interesting thing. We have the unique opportunity of thriving also as individuals, creating wealth, and also having impact in our society. So I hope, this conference helped you think how you can put this technology to the service of society.
Great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. We'll see you tomorrow. Great.